Okay, let's get on to our next interview. And this one is all about driving profitable growth for B2B through automation. And to help us get through that little journey, I'd like to introduce Ashish Surti, who is the Chief Digital and Information Officer at Colt. Welcome, Ashish. And also to interview him, Oleg Volpin, who is the President of Europe Telefonica Global and Network Offering Division at Amdocs. Welcome, Oleg.
Hey, Ash, good to see you here.
Thanks,
Welcome. And I would like to start with first asking you to introduce the Colt, because majority of the operators you saw today, the mobile operators, the fixed line operator, but they have B2C and B2B customers. We just have a geo presentations with probably hundreds of millions of customers. And Colt is different. Colt is fully focused on B2B. So maybe if you could share a few words about the Colt business and where you are.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Oleg, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. So for those that don't know, Colt, actually the acronym stands for City of London Telecommunications. It was born as a challenger within the UK some 32 years ago, but today we are the largest pan-European privately owned fibre company operating across most of the European locations. We have our own physical presence in Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and we also have virtual presence across the Americas as well. So from a organization perspective, as you said, Oleg, very unique, because actually our value proposition is to very much focus on that B2B, and we have roughly about 30,000 customers and moving vast amounts of data at high speed.
Thank you, Ash. And the next question I would like to ask you, again, we talk about the B2B growth. Majority of the operators here, they have B2C and B2B. B2C, again, maybe except Geo, is quite stagnant if you look at it, especially in European market. And the B2B is the biggest growth. And this is what you're doing. You grow your B2B business, you're going through the M&As and you're expanding your portfolio. And what is the major thing you have to do in order to make it successful? On top, of course, to sell your products to your customer. What will make it successful? What will make it a good, profitable business for you that you can expand more?
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on, especially within Colt. We've just acquired the Lumen EMEA business. And in that acquisition, we're essentially merging that book of business. And one of the things that we see is using technology as a capability, right? So we've used it as an inflection point to modernize all of our technology at the foundation layer. And Amdocs is empowering a lot of that capability from an inventory as well as billing and other aspects as well. But what we're really also doing is reimagining some of the product and services that we're selling our customers and decomposing those. One of the things that we find is that trying to introduce new product and services into our legacy technology stack takes weeks, months, if not years sometimes. And we're trying to break that challenge so we can give the business the power to introduce new product and services. The other piece that we recognize now is that we're not going to be able to survive alone. None of our telco partners can. But actually, we're not just partnering with other telcos anymore. We have to partner with other SIs that are out there. We have to partner with the likes of the Microsofts and the Googles of this world and participate in that market space. But what that really requires, and I think we've just heard it from the previous presenters, is that you need to have a modern IT stack that can talk digitally in a market space, providing and exposing some of your product and services. But then the final piece is automation. We know today that telcos are still servicing their customers with 30, 60, 90-day lead times, and sometimes and often they're missed for various different reasons, because you're working with local incumbent councils for leeways. Sometimes you have to dig the road up and you get long time lead times for that. Sometimes we get it wrong because we're trying to partner with another telco and we've miscommunicated things. So to really drive that automation, we're really looking at the end-to-end process of our customer journey and trying to figure out what are the handover points where we can start to think about using more and more automation, whether it's APIs, RPAs. Everyone talks about AI, and we're looking at that piece as well. So I think automation is a key part, but it requires the entire industry. And I think the TM Forum is a great catalyst for that, to try and standardize the way we're working.
Okay, when you look at the automation, and again, we do a lot of automation for our customer by introducing new system. But I would like to relate again to the previous conversation with you, and it's really fascinating. You have system that you deployed 3 years before, and then you replace it in 3 years. But in the reality, when we talk about our business, for majority of us, it's much longer time before you decide to replace the system, to enable new solutions, because you have so many things that you have to focus on. And first of all, success of your business with your customer. So what is your approach when you decide what is a critical thing to automate, to enable, to replace your legacy, and what could stand for a longer time? Because that's a critical thing. And again, we are as well, to a certain extent, B2B provider, right? We provide services for the telecommunication or service providers company, and we would like to, of course, to convince you to replace as fast as possible. Every 3 years, every other year, this will be beautiful. But reality is different. So what is your approach between to be pragmatic on one side and on another side to enable really this automation process so you can sell faster to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I was just reflecting again on that whole legacy conversation. It's come up in a couple of my meetings as well. I mean, look, you have to look at risk, right, as your organization. I mean, we know that IT isn't just a back office operation. Now, your systems are not just there because you need them. They're actually driving your business. They are the business in a sense. So we've done a lot of work around looking at all of our components, thinking about the risk exposure. I think cybersecurity is another area where you have to be very careful. You can't sweat assets where they've got lots of vulnerabilities and exposures to your organization. And I think that drives a different behavior as well. But I think it comes back to perceived value from the business as well. If you can persuade the business there is value in keeping your IT estate as close to evergreen as possible, I think then you can drive other things. And I think the conundrum and the inflection point we've got as an industry, in technology at least anyway, it'd be good to hear your perspective on this as well, Oleg, is that if you look at all the things that business wants to do with data, with AI, that's going to require some element of modernization and keeping that modernization active at all times. And I think if you think back about 10 years ago when we had Exchange servers running email, right? Today, no one thinks about having a legacy Exchange server. But I remember when I was in the bank, we were always trying to sweat it for that another 6 months or a year because you could, and there was an option to do that. But today, you don't have that option anymore. You've purchased yourself into a collaboration platform. It's evergreen because it's in the cloud. And in this scenario, all the new rich features keep popping up every single time. It's trying to explain that to the business that this is why we need to keep innovating and moving the IT platform, because that's the way they get the new features and capabilities in that space. But yeah, it'd be interesting from your perspective, Oleg, you are providing us software as well, right? And how that works from your side.
I will start with another example, actually from one of our Scandinavian customer. I will not mention the name. It was about a few years ago. I have a meeting with CEO, and usually when we have a meeting with CEO, it's a lot about success, but sometimes pressure on the prices and why it's take too long, so they cannot serve their customer that fast. And then I asked the CEO this question. So when the last time you installed Office 3.1? Now we're talking about 2019, 19. You told me, Oleg, how our conversation related about Office 3.1. I said, because our BSS system that enable you exactly the same age when the Office 3.1 was built. So it's working like the clock, it's producing bills, it serves orders, but it's the same age. But then when you want to go faster to the customer, think about that we will try to do it with Office 3.1. You couldn't install this at that point anymore, right? None of us would be able to install it with the current Windows systems. So coming back to your point is, you have to be pragmatic, you have to take in consideration the risk, but you have to believe that at certain point there is no other way but to evolve to the new technology. And I firmly believe it, not because I'm working for the technology company, but because to serve the customer, you have to capitalize on the new IT software. And and Gen AI and data and everything. And there is a limit for the legacy. Now, I cannot put exact number, right? For the certain legacy, it could be 20 years, for another 10, for another 5. It's have to be pragmatic. But to believe that if you have like a 30 years old backbone of something, whatever it's network, IT systems or cables in the ground, and you can provide superior customer experience, I don't believe in it. So you have to be pragmatic, but evolving to the new age, to automation, to Gen AI, eventually at some point requires to streamline your IT environment. And then, by the way, from that point, with the current technology, where you have ongoing upgrades, always on, I think it will be much easier. But this last 30 years of legacy, it's still on our shoulders. And unless we solve it, we will be locked to this certain level of success, whatever it is.
I think,
that's at least my view. And
yeah, and I think the inflection point we've had at Colt is that the acquisition meant that we needed to upgrade vast amounts of our IT stack, and actually the vision that we've put forward to our board and the execs is to make sure that when we upgrade the IT platform this time, it can also scale for future M&A opportunities, or even in the other direction where we might be carving aspects of our business out in some way. So we want the IT platform to scale up and down, but also expand into other areas of business that we may wish to do as well. I think that's a strategy that you have to kind of agree as a business, but then that gives you the willingness and the ability to put the capital that you need to start to think about which components are critical to allow that to be enabled in some way. And I think that's a, like I say, this is where I really think that the business strategy and the technology strategy have to kind of align, and you need strong execs to kind of buy into that story as well.
Ash, I have one more question, because as a company we're running many transformation of different type, right? We're running with the OSS transformation and both migrating the Lumen customer and putting a new system. We're looking into to expand the BSS, but we have about in Europe on every moment about 26 different ones. And I have to give the compliment to the Colt, but I want to understand maybe why as well, and maybe to share it with the audience. The way you run it, because it's not about us running, it's us together, is with the right focus in spite of very complex M&A deal that you're going through. And we all knows what does it means when we acquire the company of similar size, you can say, to a certain extent, what does it mean? And still I see a very good focus how you're doing this. And this is a people problem as well. It's not just a technology problem. So what Colt doing differently, and again, I don't want to mention other customers, but some of the big ones are here in this conference, that when we run transformation with them, it takes longer time, it's complex, we have delays. It's not that everything is really green when we're working together, but it's so focused. What do you do differently on the people side, on the whatever you think it's different in Colt than I see in many other operators?
So look, I think there's a couple of things that we've been focused on over the last 2.5 years. One is to gain trust of the business that IT can deliver to their expectations. We've also tried to avoid IT in isolation, selecting tooling. And then, in the case of our inventory transformation program that we're running right now, we actually went back three or four steps, and probably a little bit of frustration at Oleg on the Amdocs side. But we wanted to make sure that our service delivery teams were absolutely comfortable with the selection of tooling, but then actually they stand as the business sponsor and play a strong role. And there's a guy called Carlos that sits on all of the project meetings. He's the VP of delivery, driving the program through conclusion. So I think that's the first thing that we've tried to do, is make sure that that business sponsorship is there. We do not run an IT program or replacement program without someone in the business sponsoring the return or what the expected outcomes are yet to be. I think that's one thing. I think secondly, the second element to this as well is that we've been focusing more on our partners and relationships that we have. We try to partner with companies that where our values and behaviors align, and I think that's quite important. Trying to understand and be very clear about what swim lane that particular partner plays in, and then how does that fit into the overall ecosystem. In fact, we've had a conversation this morning about making sure that where we have multiple partners in our ecosystem, we have conversations together to make sure that no one is feeling the other one's encroaching over each other, or making sure that there's not competition where it doesn't really require it. So really making the best power use of the partners that we have and making sure we can drive that to a conclusion. So on one side, we've got the business partnering going on and making sure that they feel accountable and driving. And then the other side, being very open and transparent with our vendor landscape as well, in terms of what we're trying to achieve and where we're trying to get to. And I think it takes a lot of investment in that. So I mean, Oleg, I know you're saying that we're doing something different, which is nice to hear. But yeah, I think that's some of the things that we're trying to do.
Thanks a lot, Ash. And probably I have a last question on my side. Maybe first to share, maybe with the audience again, what Ash just mentioned. Looks like a basics maybe, but I can tell you that so many times we're running through RFPs, we select it, we go to the process, then somewhere after 6 or 9 months in the process, it's the first time that the business audience of our customer open the result of RFP and say, oh, what are we going to get? At that point, this is the first time that they read what actually was selected, and then the challenge starts, let's put it this way. But last question again, we're in the AI era, everybody talking about this. How, where, and there are many different use cases, right? And there are endless. And I think one of the key things is to be pragmatic and focus what is important for your business. If you can say maybe, what is the number one thing that's important for Colt in respect to AI? I know it's a difficult question because you can say 10.
Yeah.
But few top ones, let's put it in there.
It's just one word, is data. Getting the data structures right. If anyone thinks they've got an AI strategy, I guarantee you're going to rewrite it in the next 3 to 4 weeks, because the conversation is evolving so quickly. But I do think that anything that you place your bets on AI, if you can't get that data plane right and the structure, I think all you're going to do is expose really bad business decisions along the way. And you know, we're on a journey to try and simplify and clarify our data sets across the piece. So that'll be it. I think data is the big focus for us at the moment.
I was very impressed with your last answer, Ashish, because that if the data's not right, no amount of AI is going to solve the problem.
Yep.
And you must be going through this process at the moment of cleansing, checking everything, I suppose, before you introduce.
It's funny, actually, we're using AI to find where the data is, and also using it to find the inaccuracies that exist in the organization as well. And the other thing is that actually it's also telling us where data hasn't been secured appropriately. And again, we're using those capabilities to find those, so we can get the structure right and the access permissions right before we even let the business loose in terms of what the art of the possible is. So yeah, there's some foundational things you can do with the technology to get you set up for it.
Fabulous advice. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come down.